This program was funded in part by a Ready to Learn, No Child Left Behind grant from the U.S. Department of Education through the Public Broadcasting Service, and by contributions to your PBS station from viewers like you. Thank you.
Hi everyone, welcome to today's kind of special video. So, as we are well aware, it's election season, and obviously this year we're voting for a new president. So I figured that, since election day is within the last 2 weeks until, election day, which, by the way, if you haven't gone out and vote, please go out and vote. Let your voice be heard. So, for today, I kind of want to explain to you guys in the most simplest way possible of what the Electoral College is, how it works, and most importantly, what happens if there's a tie. So, just for simplicity's sake, the Electoral College is a collection of 538 votes that determines who the next president will be. Now, all those votes is kind of split up to determine how many members of Congress each state actually has, with the exception of DC, which gets 3. So, the 538 is split down into 438 for how many members of the House there are, even though there are 435, but like how I said, DC gets 3 votes. And the extra 100 are however many senators there are in the Senate, since there are 100 senators and 435 members of the House, which gives us 535. But 3 extra electors from DC gives us our number of 538. Now, in order to win the presidency, you have to win half of it plus 1, which is where we get our magic number of 270. So, this is how the election technically works. Is that on election day, we are not voting for the president. Yeah, I know. That's why a lot of people don't like the Electoral College, because we, the people, are not directly voting for the president. Instead, we are voting for a state's pre-approved electors from each party. So since we have, Democrats and Republicans, everyone in every single state and DC will be voting for a already selected group of electors from each state, depending on the party. Because there's already 2 predetermined groups, whether if you're a Republican or Democrat, and the number of electors is how many electoral votes each state has. So, for example, there are 54 delegates and electoral votes for California. So depending on which party wins the popular vote of California, that predetermined group will be the group that will eventually vote for president, which is more likely going to be Democrat since the 90s. And here in Ohio, it's roughly the same story. So we have 17 electoral votes, so we already have a predetermined group of 17 Republican delegates and 17 Democrat delegates. Whichever candidate gets the simple majority of the popular vote in the state, that group of electors will be the ones to determine who will be will cast the actual ballot for Ohio. The only exception to that is the states of Maine and Nebraska. Because in all the other states and DC, it is a simple majority, meaning that if a candidate, like how I said before, gets at least half of the popular vote, that candidate is guaranteed to win those electoral votes of that state. Maine and Nebraska are a bit different because they do it based on congressional districts. Maine has a total of 4 electoral votes, and they have 2 congressional districts. So each district will vote however they wish. Usually one of them will end up being Republican, the other will be Democrat. And the other 2 votes will more likely go to the Democrats. So at the very least, we'll have 3 go to the Democrat and 1 going to the Republican. Same kind of story with Nebraska, although Nebraska has 3 congressional districts and the other 2 are, other delegates for the state. So for each of the districts, it is a simple majority, but they also look at how the whole entire state does and do the other 2 accordingly based on what party. So more likely, Nebraska will end up with 4 Republican and 1 Democrat. So that is just basically how that would work out. So election day has come and passed. Everyone votes, and the presumptive winner has already been decided. The real election takes place in early December by the already pre-approved electors from each state. They will meet in each state's capitals, respectively, and cast that state's electoral vote. So for the case of, here in Ohio, the predetermined group of 17 electors, more likely from the Republicans, since Ohio is now generally a safe Republican state. It's no longer a swing state. All 17 will vote for the Republican candidate, more than likely, although it might change. But they will vote for the Republican candidate, or whichever candidate it is that wins half or more of the popular vote. And that will be how the state will cast its electoral votes. Now, there are a small chance that some states might end up with some faithless electors, which will either leave the losing side and go to the winning side just because they don't want to lose, or it's a small faction of the winning party but are upset with the candidate they won with, and they'll want to switch. That doesn't really happen too often, but there are also a lot of laws in other states in which faithless electors are technically banned. Like, I'm sorry I keep using Ohio for the example, but here in Ohio, faithless electors are banned. But, yeah, there are a lot of states that don't like faithless electors according to their delegates when it comes to the president, but some kind of say, the hell with it and kind of do it anyways. So the delegates meet in early December, cast each state's respective delegate votes. They are sealed and sent over to Washington, D.C., in which then in early January, in a joint session of Congress with the still incumbent Vice President and the Speaker of the House, with the collaboration of the House and the Senate, they meet in the House chamber and certify all of the electoral ballots and all the electoral votes. And that's when they officially be like, okay, so this candidate has X number of elector votes, and the other candidate has X number of elector votes. Whoever has a simple majority, more than 270, wins the presidency, along with the running mate. So, that leads over to our next question. Since 538 is a even number, what happens if the race for president is tied? Because, half of 538 is 269, which an overall tie has never happened, but there's a chance for it to happen. It could possibly happen. So, to find out the overall answer, we have to go all the way to the Constitution and over in the 12th Amendment. I'm not going to read it all out to you, but I'm just going to simplify on the main point. Is that if there's a tie, or if there's more than 2 candidates for president that, doesn't get a majority apiece, the House of Representatives is the one to pick the president. Which, as I said before, there are 435 members of the House. So that makes it easy, right? Not quite. Because in the case of a tie, or when there's more than 2 candidates for president that, doesn't get the majority of the Electoral College apiece, each of the state's House delegation has to decide amongst themselves and pick someone to be president. Meaning, one state, one vote. Yeah. And you might think that, okay, so if the House picks the president and it's, an actual candidate, does that candidate's running mate go along with them? No, because if that were to happen, the Senate has to independently pick the vice president. Which, yeah, it's possible to have a president of one party and a vice president of the other. Which, in our entire political history, that has only happened once, and that was the election of 1796. But this was before the 12th Amendment was even ratified. John Adams was a Federalist, and Thomas Jefferson, his opponent, was the Democratic Republican, because the rule was, before the 12th Amendment, in those days, whoever got the most of the Electoral College was the president, and whoever was the runner-up with the second most would become vice president. So, yeah, those meetings were definitely awkward. That's the only time we ever had a president of one party and a vice president of the other. Now, has the House ever had to pick a president by state ballot? Yes, they have. Going all the way back to 1824. Yeah, 200 years ago. The overall number that you needed to win as a simple majority was 131. But Andrew Jackson had the most of the popular vote, but he also won the most of the Electoral College, but not the majority. And so the House had to vote as states, with, one state, one vote, and they picked John Quincy Adams to be the next president of the United States. So yeah, will it happen again? I highly doubt it with our two-party system, although I think a lot of Americans, with me included, are really tired with our two-party system, but just, in general. So, we Americans vote for a predetermined group of electors. Those said electors would end up going to the state capitals and voting for president, casting the actual ballot. Those ballots are sealed, sent over to Washington, D.C., and in a joint session of Congress, the House and Senate certify the election, and then whoever gets a simple majority, at least 270 or more, that person will become the next president of the United States, who will then be sworn in just a few weeks later on January 20th. And ironically, the day that Congress is supposed to certify the electors for the next presidential term is January 6th. Yeah, it's have a repeat again, just like in 2021. Hopefully no riot, but we'll see how that goes. Alright, so that's all I have for now. That's just a simplified way of how the Electoral College works and how the actual process of Americans voting for president technically works and plays out. Alright, thanks for watching, and we'll see you in the next video of whatever comes out.
This program was funded in part by a Ready to Learn, No Child Left Behind grant from the U.S. Department of Education through the Public Broadcasting Service, and by contributions to your PBS station from viewers like you. Thank you.